Well, when you hear talk of the market, most people tend to think of stocks and bonds. One area that has long been considered a niche market but has been growing in prominence in recent years is that of commodities. In this morning's U.S. Bank Economic 360, U.S. Bank Vice President and Senior Portfolio Manager Mike Denneman joins us to discuss the commodities market and what it means for investors. He's with Business Watch producer Kelly Leon in the studio. Mike and Kelly.
Thanks, Peg. Hi, Mike.
Good morning.
So let's start first and foremost. What are commodities? Let's be clear on that.
Sure. So it's a very broad category of assets, but they're a little bit different in that they're tangible. You can actually touch them. And so it's often been said, very tongue-in-cheek, that if it comes out of the ground, it's a commodity. So think mining, for instance, precious metals like gold and silver, industrial metals, copper. Energy commodities would be like oil, coal, natural gas, and then there's a whole array of agricultural commodities. So think wheat, corn, coffee, cattle. So these are just a few examples. It's a very, very broad category, but they each have their own individual markets. They have prices that move up and down, just like stocks and bonds, so you can invest in it like any other asset.
Okay, so I can invest in commodities. How?
Yeah. That's the key factor, right? And so there are a number of ways. On one extreme, remember, these are tangible assets, so it's possible to go out there and buy the physical commodity itself. Many very large investors will do that, although of course they're buying in bulk. For most of us, it's not practical. We don't want a backyard filled with cattle or a basement filled with bushels of wheat, right? So there has to be a more efficient method for that. And there are a couple. One that's been around for a very long time has been the options and futures markets. So recall the movie Trading Places.
Right.
And so that was the futures
I'm glad
pit.
you brought that up, because that's what I'm thinking.
That was futures trading for orange juice. Fictional, of course, but you know, that's one method of doing so. Something, again, that the typical investor is really not going to be comfortable dabbling in.
Right.
So this is where, over the last decade, just the boom in exchange-traded funds has really kind of opened the door for the typical investor. So these are funds that invest in all sorts of assets, including commodities, and you can find a fund to cover just about any base you'd like. There are very specific funds that focus on a single commodity. Others focus on categories, metals or agriculturals, and then there are others still that are very broad. They encompass commodities across the board, almost like an index fund. But the common thread is that, like any fund, they have a ticker symbol, they've got a readily available price, they're very liquid, and so it went from being a niche that was fairly inaccessible to now it's just a mouse click away.
So if it is now so accessible, is it something that all investors should consider, like people like me who aren't part of the bigger picture here?
Right. So, like anything else, and I'm going to punt, as I usually do, each investor needs to consider their individual situation.
Right.
Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And with anything else, there's pros and there's cons. On the pro side, it's a diversifier. Commodities tend to zig when everything else zags. So, you know, that can help your portfolio. Also can be a hedge against inflation. On the other hand, they tend to be more volatile than stocks and bonds, so that's not for everybody, and they typically don't pay dividends or interest. So if you're looking for income, probably not a good fit. So worth discussing with your advisor to see if it's appropriate, but the bottom line is that there are more opportunities now, and if you're an investor, the more alternatives you have, the better, and so these funds, again, have made accessible something that previously wasn't.
So yeah, it might impress my advisor if I give him a call and say, hey, how about commodities?
Yeah, hey, I want to buy some coffee.
Something else I learned on U.S. Bank Business Watch. All right, Mike, thanks so much. Very interesting.